The sound of shattering glass pierced through the warm evening air as Officer Martinez kicked down the door of Rainbow Haven, the neighborhood's beloved LGBTQ+ community bar. Inside, 23 patrons dove under tables, their laughter from moments before replaced by screams of terror. Alex Chen, the bar's owner, stood behind the polished oak counter, hands raised, rainbow-colored lights still pulsing overhead, in a cruel irony of celebration turned nightmare. "Get on the ground now," Martinez shouted, his weapon drawn, backup officers flooding through the entrance like a militarized invasion force. The bass from the sound system cut abruptly, leaving only the harsh crackle of police radios and the whimpering of customers pressed against the floor. Alex's voice remained steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "Officers, there's been a mistake. This is a safe space, a community gathering." "Shut up!" Officer Bradley screamed, grabbing Alex by the shoulders and slamming them face first into the bar top. A glass of half-finished wine exploded against Alex's cheek, crimson liquid mixing with blood as the edge cut deep. "We got a call about terrorists planning an attack." The word terrorists hung in the air like poison gas, seeping into every corner of the small establishment that had served as sanctuary for so many. Maria Santos, a regular patron celebrating her anniversary with her wife, clutched her partner's hand as officers zip-tied their wrists behind their backs. The couple had been sharing dessert just minutes ago, planning their upcoming vacation, their joy now replaced by raw terror. 3 blocks away, Karen Mitchell stood at her kitchen window, phone still warm in her palm, watching the blue and red lights reflect off her pristine white shutters. Her thin lips curved into a satisfied smile as she counted the patrol cars, 7 in total. More than she'd expected. The 911 recording would later reveal her carefully crafted lie, delivered with the practiced hysteria of someone who had weaponized emergency services before. "They're planning something big," she had told the dispatcher, her voice trembling with manufactured fear. "I heard them talking about explosives, about targeting families. The bar owner, Alex Chen, they're organizing some kind of attack for tonight. Please, you have to stop them before people get hurt." Now, as sirens wailed in the distance, Karen adjusted her pearl necklace and poured herself a glass of expensive wine. The rainbow flag hanging outside Alex's establishment had offended her for months, a colorful reminder that her neighborhood was changing in ways she couldn't control. Tonight, she had taken control back. At Rainbow Haven, chaos continued to unfold with brutal efficiency. Officers dragged patrons outside one by one, their faces pressed against hot pavement as neighbors emerged from their homes to witness the spectacle. Mrs. Patterson from next door gasped as she recognized Tommy, her son's high school friend, among those being arrested. The young man who had helped her carry groceries just last week now lay handcuffed on the sidewalk, tears streaming down his face. "This isn't right," Mrs. Patterson whispered to her husband, but her words were lost in the cacophony of official commands and civilian panic. Alex remained conscious despite the beating, their mind racing through the events that had led to this moment. Today was supposed to be the planning meeting for their annual charity drive, an event that raised money for homeless LGBTQ+ youth in the city. They had spent weeks organizing the logistics, reaching out to local businesses for donations, coordinating with volunteers. The irony was suffocating, accused of planning violence while actually planning compassion. "Officer, please." Alex managed to speak through swollen lips. "Check my phone. Look at the calendar. We're organizing a charity event, not—" Bradley's boot connected with Alex's ribs, cutting off their words with a sharp crack that sent pain shooting through their torso. "I said shut up. We know what you people are capable of." The phrase "you people" carried the weight of centuries of prejudice, each syllable dripping with the kind of hate that transforms neighbors into enemies, that turns community gathering spaces into crime scenes in the minds of those who refuse to understand difference as anything other than danger. Meanwhile, several patrons had managed to record portions of the raid on their smartphones before officers confiscated the devices. Jessica Park, a local journalist who had been interviewing Alex for a story about community resilience, captured the most damning footage. Her phone, hidden beneath the table where she had taken cover, recorded 18 minutes of police brutality, false accusations, and the systematic destruction of a space built on love and acceptance. As Alex was dragged outside in handcuffs, their employee, Marcus Williams, watched from his apartment window across the street. Marcus, a sociology graduate student who had worked at Rainbow Haven for 2 years, immediately began documenting everything he witnessed. His trained eye caught details that others might miss: the excessive force used on clearly nonviolent individuals, the lack of any attempt at de-escalation, the obvious disconnect between the alleged crime and the reality of the situation. "This is wrong," Marcus muttered, reaching for his laptop. "This is so fucking wrong." Within minutes, Marcus had posted the first account of the raid on social media, his words carrying the urgency of someone who understood they were witnessing an injustice that demanded immediate attention. His post would later serve as the catalyst for the community response that followed. But at that moment, he was simply a witness trying to make sense of senseless brutality. The first twist in this tragic narrative came when Officer Martinez discovered Alex's clipboard behind the bar. Instead of finding evidence of terrorist planning, he found detailed notes about fundraising goals, volunteer schedules, and contact information for local shelters. The charity event was scheduled for the following weekend, with an ambitious goal of raising $50,000 for homeless youth services. Martinez frowned as he read through the documents. His own daughter had benefited from similar services 2 years ago, when she had been kicked out of her home for coming out as transgender. The shelters Alex was planning to support had literally saved his daughter's life. The cognitive dissonance was staggering here. He was arresting someone who was trying to help kids like his own daughter. "Bradley," Martinez called out, his voice less certain than before. "You need to see this." But Bradley was too deep in his adrenaline-fueled rage to listen to reason. He had already decided that Alex and the patrons were guilty of something, and evidence to the contrary only fueled his determination to find proof of their criminality. This tunnel vision, this refusal to acknowledge facts that contradicted predetermined biases, would later become a central focus of the subsequent investigation and trial. By 10 o'clock that night, all 23 patrons and Alex had been processed and released from the county jail. No charges were filed because no evidence of criminal planning could be found. Despite 6 hours of interrogation and thorough searches of both the premises and the detainees, the official police report would later describe the incident as a response to a credible threat that proved to be unfounded. But the damage was already done. Alex returned to Rainbow Haven to find their life's work in ruins. Tables were overturned, chairs broken, the sound system destroyed. Bottles of alcohol lay shattered across the floor, their contents mixing into a sticky, expensive mess. The rainbow flags that had hung proudly from the walls were torn down and trampled, their bright colors now stained with mud and contempt. The financial damage exceeded $30,000, but the emotional and psychological damage was incalculable. The second twist came the following morning when Jessica Park's footage went viral. The 18-minute video showed the entire raid from start to finish, capturing not only the excessive police response, but also audio of Alex explaining about the charity event. Social media exploded with outrage, as the video was shared hundreds of thousands of times within the first 24 hours. "Why? Justice for Rainbow Haven began trending as supporters from across the country shared their own stories of discrimination and police harassment. The video clearly showed Alex attempting to explain the charitable nature of their gathering, only to be silenced with violence. It showed patrons cowering in terror as officers treated them like enemy combatants rather than citizens enjoying a peaceful evening at their local establishment. More importantly, the audio captured several officers making explicitly homophobic comments during the raid. Bradley could be heard referring to the patrons as perverts and degenerates, while another officer suggested they deserved whatever they got for flaunting their lifestyle. These comments, recorded clearly on Jessica's phone, would later become crucial evidence in the federal hate crime investigation. Karen Mitchell watched the news coverage from her living room, her satisfaction slowly curdling into anxiety as reporters described the incident as a hate crime and a false police report. She had expected the story to disappear within a day or two, another minor incident in a busy news cycle. Instead, it was growing into something much larger and more dangerous to her carefully constructed suburban facade. The community response began immediately. By noon, a crowd of supporters had gathered outside Rainbow Haven, bringing cleaning supplies, flowers, and messages of solidarity. Local businesses offered donations to help with repairs. The mayor's office issued a preliminary statement promising a full investigation. Even some police officers, including Martinez, began speaking privately about their discomfort with how the raid had been conducted. Dr. Sarah Kim, a prominent civil rights attorney, arrived at Rainbow Haven within hours of the video's release. She had built her career defending LGBTQ+ rights and recognized immediately that this case had the potential to set important legal precedents. As she surveyed the damage and interviewed Alex, she was already building the framework for multiple lawsuits that would seek not just financial compensation, but systematic change. "This isn't just about you," Dr. Kim told Alex as they sat among the broken glass and overturned furniture. "This is about every LGBTQ+ person who has been targeted by people who weaponize law enforcement to attack communities they don't understand. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win." Alex nodded slowly, still processing the surreal transformation of their life from peaceful bar owner to reluctant civil rights symbol. The physical wounds from the beating were painful, but would heal. The deeper wounds, the violation of their sanctuary, the betrayal by their community's protectors, the knowledge that someone had deliberately tried to destroy them, those would take much longer to address. As news of the incident spread, Rainbow Haven became a pilgrimage site for supporters. People traveled from neighboring cities to leave flowers, hang new rainbow flags, and show their solidarity. Local LGBTQ+ organizations coordinated volunteers to help with cleanup and security. The bar that had been destroyed by hate was being rebuilt by love, one small act of kindness at a time. The investigation into Karen Mitchell began 3 days after the raid, when phone records revealed the source of the false 911 call. Detective Lisa Rodriguez, assigned to the case, had seen enough false reports to recognize the pattern immediately. The call had come from Karen's home phone. The voice matched previous complaints she had filed about the bar, and her story about overhearing terrorist planning was inconsistent with the physical layout of the neighborhood. "Mrs. Mitchell," Detective Rodriguez said during their first interview, "we need to talk about your call to 911 on Tuesday evening." Karen's composure cracked slightly as she realized she was now under investigation. "I reported what I heard. It's not my fault if the police overreacted." "What exactly did you hear? And where were you when you heard it?" The questions continued for 2 hours, each one revealing new inconsistencies in Karen's story. She claimed to have overheard conversations from 3 blocks away. She insisted she had seen suspicious activity that, according to security cameras, had never occurred. Most damning of all, she couldn't explain how she had obtained specific details about Alex's supposed terrorist planning that she could not possibly have overheard from her home. The investigation revealed that Karen had a history of complaints about Rainbow Haven. She had called the city about noise violations that were never substantiated. She had complained to the health department about alleged safety violations that inspectors could never find. She had even tried to organize a petition to have the bar's liquor license revoked, citing moral concerns about the establishment's influence on neighborhood families. This woman has been waging a campaign of harassment against Alex Chen for over a year. Detective Rodriguez explained to her supervisor, the false 911 call was just the latest escalation in her ongoing effort to shut down the bar. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, security camera footage, witness statements, and Karen's own inconsistent testimony painted a clear picture of a hate crime motivated by homophobia and executed through false police reporting. The district attorney's office announced they would be pursuing multiple felony charges, including filing a false police report, inciting violence, and federal hate crime violations. Meanwhile, the police department's internal investigation was revealing systemic problems with how the raid had been conducted. Body camera footage showed officers using excessive force against non-violent individuals. Radio communications revealed that several officers had expressed doubt about the credibility of the initial report, but were ordered to proceed anyway. Most troubling of all, the investigation uncovered evidence that similar incidents had occurred before, with LGBTQ+ establishments receiving disproportionate scrutiny and aggressive police responses. Chief Patricia Wong, who had been appointed to reform the department just 6 months earlier, found herself facing the biggest crisis of her tenure. The Federal Department of Justice had opened its own investigation. Community trust was at an all-time low, and her officers were split between those demanding accountability and those defending the raid as necessary police work. "This ends now," Chief Wong announced during a packed press conference. "We will not tolerate officers who allow their personal biases to influence their professional conduct. We will not accept false reports that waste resources and endanger innocent people. And we will not permit our badge to be used as a weapon against the communities we serve." The announcement came with concrete actions. Officer Bradley was terminated immediately for his use of excessive force and discriminatory language. 3 other officers involved in the raid were suspended pending further investigation. The department implemented new training requirements focused on LGBTQ+ sensitivity and implicit bias recognition. Most significantly, they established a new oversight committee with community representation to review all future incidents involving minority-owned businesses. These changes represented more than policy adjustments. They reflected a fundamental shift in how the department approached community policing. The Rainbow Haven incident had exposed the deadly consequences of prejudice masquerading as law enforcement, and Chief Wong was determined to ensure it never happened again. The federal hate crime investigation moved swiftly as prosecutors built their case against Karen Mitchell. The evidence was extensive and damning. Her phone contained searches for how to report terrorist activity and getting police to raid businesses conducted days before the incident. Text messages to friends revealed her true motivations, including one where she wrote, "I'm going to shut down that disgusting bar once and for all. These people think they can flaunt their perversion in our neighborhood, but I'll show them who really belongs here." Perhaps most shocking was the discovery that Karen had made similar false reports in her previous neighborhood, targeting a Muslim family and a Mexican restaurant. The pattern of behavior revealed a serial abuser of emergency services who used law enforcement as her personal weapon against anyone she deemed undesirable. This defendant has repeatedly weaponized the police against vulnerable communities. Federal prosecutor Maria Gonzalez explained to the press, "Her actions endangered innocent lives and undermined public safety. We will seek the maximum penalty under federal hate crime statutes." The legal consequences extended beyond criminal charges. Alex and several patrons filed civil rights lawsuits, seeking damages for false imprisonment, assault, and violation of their constitutional rights. Local businesses that had been affected by the negative publicity also joined the litigation. The total financial exposure exceeded $2 million, threatening to bankrupt Karen and her husband completely. But the community response went far beyond legal action. The Rainbow Haven Support Fund raised over $200,000 within 2 weeks, far exceeding what was needed for repairs. The excess money was used to establish a legal defense fund for other LGBTQ+ businesses facing discrimination and to expand the bar's charity programs. The charity event that had been interrupted by the raid was rescheduled for the following month. Instead of the modest gathering originally planned, it became a citywide celebration of resilience and unity. Over 3,000 people attended, raising more than $150,000 for homeless LGBTQ+ youth services. Local politicians, religious leaders, and community activists stood alongside Alex to denounce hatred and celebrate diversity. "This is what America looks like when we choose love over fear," Alex told the crowd, their voice carrying across the packed park. "They tried to silence us with violence. They tried to destroy us with lies. But we are still here. We are still proud. And we are still family." The crowd's response was thunderous, a roar of approval that could be heard for blocks in every direction. Rainbow flags waved among the cheering supporters, creating a sea of color that stood in stark contrast to the darkness that had threatened to consume them just weeks earlier. Mayor Jennifer Walsh took the stage next, her voice heavy with emotion as she addressed the assembled crowd. What happened to Alex Chen and the patrons of Rainbow Haven was not just an attack on them. It was an attack on our city's values. We are a community that celebrates diversity, protects the vulnerable, and stands up to those who would use hatred as their weapon. The mayor's speech was interrupted by sustained applause as she announced the city's new LGBTQ+ Community Protection Initiative. The program included enhanced hate crime reporting procedures, cultural competency training for all city employees, and the establishment of Rainbow Haven as an official city landmark, recognizing its importance to the community's cultural heritage. Karen Mitchell's trial began 4 months after the raid, drawing national media attention and protesters from across the political spectrum. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating, presenting evidence that painted Karen as a calculating predator who had deliberately endangered innocent lives to satisfy her personal prejudices. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Prosecutor Gonzalez began her opening statement. "This case is about a woman who turned 911 into her personal weapon. She saw a community that didn't match her vision of how the world should look, and she decided to destroy it using the most powerful force at her disposal, law enforcement." Karen's defense attorney attempted to portray her as a concerned citizen who had acted in good faith based on genuine fears. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury heard recordings of Karen's false 911 call, alongside Alex's actual planning documents for the charity event. They saw footage of the brutal raid, contrasted with testimonies from youth whose lives had been saved by the very programs Alex supported. Most damaging was Karen's own testimony. Under cross-examination, she revealed the depth of her prejudice with startling clarity. When asked why she had never spoken directly to Alex about her concerns, she responded, "I don't associate with those types of people. They're not the kind of neighbors decent families want." "What types of people?" Prosecutor Gonzalez pressed. "You know what I mean," Karen replied. her mask of suburban respectability finally slipping completely. People who promote that lifestyle. People who think they can force their agenda on normal families. The courtroom fell silent as Karen's words revealed the ugly truth behind her actions. This wasn't about terrorism or public safety. It was about hatred, pure and simple, dressed up in the language of community concern, but motivated by the same prejudice that had fueled discrimination for generations. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Karen Mitchell was convicted of filing false police reports, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and federal hate crime charges. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised probation, and restitution of over $1.8 million to her victims. Your actions endangered innocent lives and betrayed the trust that our emergency response system depends on. Judge Robert Chen told Karen during sentencing, "You turned your neighbors' protectors into their attackers, and you did so deliberately and with malice. Your sentence reflects not just the harm you caused, but the message our community sends about the consequences of weaponizing hatred." The sentencing hearing was packed with Rainbow Haven supporters, many of whom had been present during the original raid. As Karen was led away in handcuffs, Alex stood with their community, finally able to begin the process of true healing. But the story didn't end with Karen's conviction. The broader implications of the Rainbow Haven incident continued to resonate throughout the region and beyond. Police departments in nearby cities reviewed their own protocols for responding to reports about LGBTQ+ establishments. Civil rights organizations used the case as a teaching tool for recognizing and responding to weaponized law enforcement. Most importantly, the LGBTQ+ community gained a powerful symbol of resilience in the face of systematic oppression. Rainbow Haven reopened 6 months after the raid, transformed from a simple neighborhood bar into a beacon of community strength. The repairs had restored the physical space, but the real renovation was deeper and more meaningful. The bar now featured a community center annex offering legal aid, mental health services, and support groups for LGBTQ+ individuals facing discrimination. The charity programs Alex had been planning on the night of the raid expanded into a nonprofit organization serving the entire metropolitan area. The reopening celebration drew over 5,000 supporters, turning the surrounding streets into an impromptu festival of diversity and acceptance. Local businesses donated food and services. Churches that had once remained silent about LGBTQ+ issues publicly declared their support for inclusion. Even some police officers attended, wearing rainbow pins and carrying signs apologizing for their department's role in the trauma. Officer Martinez was among those officers seeking redemption. His daughter, the transgender woman who had been helped by the same shelters Alex supported, stood beside him as he addressed the crowd. "I was there that night," Martinez said, his voice barely audible over the sound system. "I participated in something that went against everything I joined the force to protect. I can't undo the harm we caused, but I can promise you that I will spend the rest of my career making sure it never happens again." His words were met with mixed reactions from the crowd, but Alex stepped forward to shake his hand, understanding that healing required forgiveness as much as justice. The transformation extended beyond individual reconciliation. The city implemented the most comprehensive LGBTQ+ protection ordinances in the state, including enhanced penalties for bias crimes and mandatory bias training for all public employees. The police department's reforms became a national model for other agencies seeking to rebuild trust with marginalized communities. Rainbow Haven's charity programs, funded by the continuing wave of donations, expanded to serve over 2,000 homeless LGBTQ+ youth annually. The organization established partnerships with schools, healthcare providers, and social service agencies to create a comprehensive support network that addressed the root causes of LGBTQ+ homelessness. We turned our trauma into transformation. Alex reflected during an interview on the first anniversary of the raid. They tried to destroy us with lies, but we rebuilt ourselves with truth. They tried to isolate us with fear, but we connected with love. That's the real victory, not just surviving their attack, but using it to create something better than what existed before. The interview took place in Rainbow Haven's renovated space, where the walls now featured artwork created by the youth the organization served. Photos from the charity drives hung alongside letters from grateful families. The rainbow flags flew higher and brighter than before, no longer just symbols of identity, but banners of triumph over those who had tried to erase that identity entirely. As the anniversary approached, the community prepared for another celebration. But this one would be different. Instead of defiance in the face of trauma, it would be joy in the face of transformation. Instead of mourning what had been lost, it would be celebrating what had been gained. Rainbow Haven had become more than a bar, more than a community center, more than a symbol. It had become proof that hatred, no matter how violently expressed, could not extinguish the light of human dignity and love. The final chapter of the story was still being written by everyone who chose inclusion over exclusion, truth over lies, and love over fear. Karen Mitchell's attempt to destroy a community had instead created a stronger, more united, and more resilient network of support that would endure long after her hatred was forgotten. In the end, that was the true victory. Not the legal vindication, not the financial compensation, not even the policy changes, though all were important. The real triumph was the community that emerged from the ashes of that terrible night, stronger and more determined than ever to protect and celebrate the beautiful diversity of human experience. And Rainbow Haven remained open, its doors welcoming all who sought acceptance, understanding, and the simple right to exist authentically in a world that sometimes demanded they disappear. The lights still pulsed with rainbow colors. The music still played. The laughter had returned. And love, as it always does, had won.